Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. It means the most that you're here for this conversation tonight. We'll be discussing arts-based community development. My name is Laura Walker. I'm an architect with SmithGroup. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm also a co-founding principal of Other Work with my design partner, Mike Styczynksi. And I'm super blessed and thrilled to have our panelists here with us tonight. These are artists and community members that have spent years cultivating and creating communities that center artists. And so we're going to introduce each of them to you, but before we do that, Mike and I want to share that this panel discussion is actually a part of a guidebook that we're putting together and currently curating. And it features arts-based development in Rust Belt cities across the Midwest. But before I turn that over to you, Mike, I want to take a deep breath and kind of remind ourselves why we're here tonight and the purpose of this discussion. We're all designers, whether we design communities, buildings, the interior of spaces, objects, whatever it is that we design for people, and it's the people that we're really focused on. And so in this discussion, we'll be asking questions of the panelists about their stories, hurdles that they might have faced, obstacles that they've had to overcome, and some of their strategies. But we're always going to keep at the surface the people that they are creating spaces for. All types of people in an inclusive and equitable way that brings dignity, power, and even healing to the folks that that are in their communities. So just to quote Octavia Butler, who Adrienne Marie Brown, she's a Detroit resident, often quotes, "All that you touch, you change. And all that you change changes you." And so this conversation is really about the relationships that these artist developers have with the people that they're serving. So with that, Mike, I'll let you share the sneak preview of the guidebook that we're working on.
Hello. So here's a sneak peek. So sneak peek into the conversations and projects we are pulling together. And as Laura kind of suggested or said, we're looking at cities across the Rust Belt. So in today, so the conversation today is kind of our first sort of public discussion of this idea. But it's the first step. We hope to keep growing ideas, relationships, and knowledge focused on how artists perform as community developers of spaces and neighborhoods. So we have 4 panelists today. We've started off by looking at 18 projects across 6 cities. So these include Detroit, Flint, Buffalo, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, and Chicago. So this is all in draft, but the projects range in scale from kind of storefront spaces to city blocks to entire neighborhoods. What the projects have in common is that they're almost always kind of performative works in progress that learn and adapt from inputs of kind of participation, hard lessons learned, and the building of kind of cooperative trust, knowledge, and creativity. So where this is all going, I think the formal outcome is not necessarily clear. And today is sort of a first kind of big step towards moving forward, but our aim is to kind of build an ongoing resource of ideas and so ideas targeted towards artists, community development corporations, municipal policymakers, foundation, and basically whoever's in a position or has a desire to implement kind of new and critical ideas, creative ideas to making space. And so that's the guidebook. As a sort of introduction to Laura and I and the work we do, we're both kind of founders of this group called Other Work. Other Work is, I'm going to stop sharing. So Other Work is an experimental arts group focused on architecture and city making that promotes liberation and justice through spatial agency. So as architects and artists, we are interested in sort of revealing the complex mechanisms of how cities are made. that construct cultural, political, and economic spatial inequalities. Through forms of cooperative agency, we'd like to reimagine the role of the architect and the arts towards constructing the greatest social, cultural, and political change possible. So that's the book, that's us. Thanks for everyone for joining.
Thanks,
I think
Mike.
we're ready to get moving. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll introduce the panelists. I'll start with Alicia. Alicia George, she's a Detroit resident, and she opened Motor City Java House in 2010 as the hub of a spirited conversation, one-of-a-kind concerts, and with a passion for public art. And I'm going to quote her when I say this. Motor City Java House started because I had a dream of owning my own coffee shop in the year 2000. Although I had a dream and a vision, it was a group of individuals that helped. It was everybody: artists, poets, musicians, volunteers from universities, corporations. Everybody joined in to produce something that eventually became the Artist Village. Next up is Tammy Black. Tammy Black is also a Detroit resident. She is the president and founder of the Manistique Community Treehouse Center. As the mother to 6 children, her house is the house where all the kids love to be, to eat, play, and just to talk to her about issues or just daily life. The treehouse will be a place without judgment that allows individuals to be themselves with a focus on what their interests are and how they can develop them. This treehouse is for all children, adults, veterans, and families in the Metro Detroit area. Next up is Shatay Marsh. She is a resident of Indianapolis and a co-founder of the Big Car Collaborative. She is a curator, writer, author, and researcher. Her research centers around artist-run culture, censorship in red states, popular culture's influence on the pursuit of utopia, urban and rural relationships, and artist social roles. Working with artists who use art to bring about social change, she specializes in rapid response exhibitions. And she has curated and commissioned well over 50 exhibits. And then last but not least, we have Jim Walker. Jim leads Big Car's work as a social practice artist, placemaker, community builder, designer, teacher, and writer who believes everyone deserves access to the joys of art, creativity, and great public places. Jim has worked previously as a journalist, writer, photographer, editor, and designer for 20 years, and he is a student of cities and enjoys walking, biking, travel, and baseball. So those are our panelists, and we have prepared a list of questions for them, but we do want to say if you think of a question that you have for them, we invite you to add them to the chat, but maybe wait until, towards the end of the conversation because the answer might come up during the discussion. And then if we have time, Mike and I will go through the questions in the chat and ask the panelists. So I'm gonna start off this first batch of questions, and how about Mike, if you wanna share the images. So this first batch of questions really focuses on what your motivation and your intentions are and have been for owning and developing property. How did the space emerge, specifically around and in the communities that you're in? And how did you build trust with the communities that you're working with? So Alicia, I'm gonna have you kick this off, and I'm gonna ask you to share how the Artist Village was born, what was your vision, and who helped you in creating it, and what has kept you motivated all these years?
Okay, thank you for the warm welcome and greeting. Good evening, Detroit, and to everyone. The Artist Village started back in 2003. It was born out of love, actually, and it was when John George of Detroit Blightbusters was asked to have a no dumping sign painted in our area. And Chaz Miller, who is one of the co-founders, painted the sign. And so once he painted that, we started to look around at the space where people were dumping, and Chaz looked in an area and said, this would be a great studio to teach kids and paint murals. And then John looked in another space and said, hey, Alicia, this would be a great space for a coffee shop. And right then and there, the magic was born. And as you stated in your greeting, it was everyone that came out to assist with this. I've never seen so much love and commitment from a group of folks that wanted to see our dream and this vision come to fruition. And so that was 2003. So that was 17 years ago.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Shatay, I'm gonna ask you what your and Jim's motivations and intentions were, specifically in the Garfield Park area, understanding that you had been in another neighborhood and then had to move from there and find a new location. And so what was that journey like in terms of kind of rebuilding trust with the residents that were there, and then how you were able to bring artists in to join you in cultivating and investing in that neighborhood while at the same time sustaining the folks that were already there.
Hey, Shatay, too, maybe just mention where you guys are from and where the project's located too, so we have an audience from all over the place.
Yeah, we're located in Indianapolis, Indiana, on the southeast side of downtown Indianapolis. It's on a grid, and Garfield Park is about under a half a mile away from where Big Car was founded, and we were priced out of that area, of the Fountain Square area, unable to renew the lease that we had in the space. We were doing a lot of programming and interaction and programs, also just in that community, but using that as our headquarters in Fountain Square. So one thing that we feel as an organization is that affordable housing is key. You know, it's key to creating a new generation of people, of wealth for people who didn't have it before. And many times artists are the working poor, and you know, they, even when they go to college for their practice, they come out with loads of student loan debt, or if they're self-taught, they're relying a lot on just sporadic sales and might have to work in restaurants. So, but it's also important to keep in a city that creative class of people who are willing to take risks and think of the world. I think in a different way. So when we came to Garfield Park, Jim and I ourselves, we had a home in Fountain Square. We left and had bought a house in Garfield Park, which is how we ended up landing here, about, like I said, under a half a mile away from Fountain Square. And you know, like most cities, Indianapolis, a lot of the neighborhoods have been dealing with redlining and issues that come from systemic racism and things like that. So we, when we came to the Garfield Park neighborhood, we immediately joined the boards of the neighborhoods associations. At that point, there were two, and we were able to, it's not just Jim and I who work at Big Car. We actually have a really awesome staff of about 6 to 10 people. It kind of expands and contracts according to how much money we have to pay people. But so one of our employees at the time, Aaron Schounts, was able to go to lots of neighborhood meetings and get two organizations to combine. And that was when we were able to connect these two organizations, these two neighborhood organizations that hadn't really talked much to each other, they didn't really know why. They were like, we don't know why we're separate. It was like Garfield Park East and Garfield Park Neighbors Association. So we brought them together and did programs like Better Block. We didn't have a space when Big Car first started doing programming. So we had programs in the neighborhood like Better Block. We did a paint by number mural with the neighborhood, just raising awareness, because Garfield Park is situated right off the interstate, and a lot of people just drive right past that park and don't even know it exists, or speed through there to get to the suburbs, because a large amount of people who work downtown live in the suburbs. So we wanted people to know about this amazing asset that the park was, which is a huge, beautiful park, 150 some acres. So we did all these events, raising awareness, bringing the neighbors together. And that was a way we built trust between the neighbors and, you know, like I said, our staff they're all artists. So, yeah.
That's great, thank you. Tammy, so with the Manistee Community Treehouse Center, I think one of the really special things about that project is your focus on wellness. And so I'd like you to share what inspired you to build a center around wellness, and what does wellness mean to you and the treehouse, and how has the community helped inform that vision of wellness with you?
I had to mute myself, my grandson was talking. Hi, I'm Tammy, and I'm from Detroit also. I'm from a community I'm in the Jefferson Chalmers community of Detroit. We're in the southeast corner of Detroit, which is off of the canals. And what inspired the Treehouse Center was, number one, I'm a mother of 6 kids, as you said in the bio that you read. And my children are considered slow learners, and I have a son who's, he's 28, but mentally he's about 6 years old. And with that being said, I know that in society, a lot of times they're the people who are left out. You know, they're left out of activities, they're left out of just, you know, being a part in general. So with knowing my children, knowing their friends, and they can fix any computer, they can garden, they can read well, they can do math. I said, wait a minute. There's nothing wrong with my kids. There's something wrong with us as a people for not accepting people for who they are, right? So I looked across the street from my house, which I've been lived in for 8 years since I've been here, almost 9. And I seen these 2 big, beautiful trees. And me being the person that loves the Treehouse Master and Pete Nelson, right? I said, this is the perfect spot for a treehouse that will encompass the whole community, that will be a holistic place where people can be themselves. They can be accepted for their race, their religion, their capabilities. I just started to naming all of these things that make us up as human beings without being judged, right? So I talked to the community, I talked to my block club. They said, Tammy, if you want to do it, we're behind you all the way. And that was in 2015, and I haven't stopped this quest yet, and it's coming, it's manifesting, it's right here. So we're excited, the community's excited, I'm excited, because we'll also offer mental health in this space. So if we have someone that comes from our partnering mental health organization that says, okay, we want to have our treatment in the treehouse or on the grounds of the treehouse, they can do that. If someone wants to come and they're in their wheelchair and they want to do some creativity things that's going on in the treehouse, they can do that, because this space is their space also. So we're covering everyone, regardless of religion, regardless of race, regardless of sex. Because when you can accept a person for who they are, I think we'll have a better world. And when we can teach our kids, we can start them off learning how to collaborate together. If we can start them off accepting each other for who they are, you know, I think we're building a better world at that rate. So that's our mission, and that's our community's mission, and we're excited. And we don't have a boundary. We don't have an east side or west side or whatever. It's whoever wants to come to this space and have a space of relaxation, have good mental health, and would like to physical health. We're covering it all. You're welcome.
I love that. Thank you, Tammy.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
So next set of questions. I think this idea of openness is super powerful. I think each of the projects talks about how sort of the sort of starting from a place of openness, build these connections and forge these relationships. I think the next set of questions, we'll look at like the question the role of the artist as owner and steward of the community. Once this openness is building kind of relationships. And so this is, you know, a lot of this conversation is around, you know, ideas of gentrification, specifically the kind of proliferation of extracting and exploiting artists to colonize and kind of displace neighborhood culture and place. Sort of looking at, kind of interested in ways in how you all actually sustain artists, empower them to potentially own property, their messaging, their programming, and also the role of land as a strategy, sort of acquiring land for building power and ownership. So Jim and Shate, so to start with you guys, so as victims of gentrification and witnesses of other forms of kind of development that extract from artists, how have you sought to sustain artists, preserving and cultivating kind of existing neighbors? Can you highlight how you select artist residencies and kind of describe their involvement in contributing to ownership?
So we're going to trade off half and half on this question. So
sounds great. Yeah, cool.
A little bit of background in terms of us needing to move. Shate mentioned that we had been in a place. It changed hands. It was actually an artist-run art space. That artist ended up during the last recession in 2008, lost that building back, or had to give up his building because of the bank and the bank kind of constricting and calling in his loan. So at that point, that we were dealing with the new developer who was had a different mindset, and then we weren't able to continue being where we were. We also we then moved into a pop-up space that we were in for a few years that was free, owned mostly free, in a very vacant mall and in an area of the city that has a lot of vacancy. But in that situation, again, we were at their mercy, and then when they decided it was time for us to go, it was time for us to go. So through all that, we really focused on how could we be in charge of our own futures and own the space. And so when we were able to move into the current tube factory, that Shate kind of took us through the story to how we got there. This was in 2015. We were able to, we were fortunate to have the property owner be generous and good to work with and interested in us owning the property. We were able to get a hold of 2 factory buildings and 5 houses through some separate transactions. And we knew right away with the houses that what we wanted to do was also to begin a process of making sure that artists could own or co-own property themselves to get equity in that property. So not only would it be our arts organization, but it would also be individual artists who would have ownership. In some ways, we all want to be sort of anti-capitalistic, but we know that that's the system that we work in our country. And so by being outside of that, you end up having other people in control of you. And so Shate can talk about how we've moved forward with this and how we are selecting artists or how the community is working with us to select artists, and how we're making sure that they're able to get involved in and have that security.
Yeah, so when we were, in early 2000, we started programming in Fountain Square early 2000, like 2002 forward until we had to move out the first time. But we acknowledge and know we were a tool in gentrifying that neighborhood. And at that time, there wasn't an awareness of that. It was just like, oh, look, great. We're getting, the neighbors wanted a coffee shop. Now we got a coffee shop. The neighbors wanted this. Now we got this. And then it just, I just want to say, like, Fountain Square in particular, in the past 5 years, real estate went up like 400%. So, and unfortunately, we were part of that. We weren't the only factor in that, but we were part of that. So learning from that and learning these things trial by fire. So, we were very, we did not want to do that again. And we knew that wasn't best practices at all. So, this, with us as the developer and this land being held pretty much indefinitely in a community land trust, we can always ensure that there will be affordable housing. The artists that are selected to move into the homes are in part selected by neighbors who have lived in the neighborhood for at least 30 years or more. So, Cruft Street, where we were able to purchase, we have 11 homes for artists, 6 are rentals, and then 5 are the land trust model, between where it's partial ownership between Big Car, Riley area development, which is the community development corporate ownership of the homes. And when we say artists, I consider beauticians artists. I consider musicians, so we are, and cooks, basically people who are, I did what I know they're not paid what they're worth because they're passionate about what they're doing. So they'll, sometimes work for free because they can't help it. Artists will do things because they can't help it. So it's not about money. This project, the development we're working on, will stay owned by Big Car as long as Big Car exists as an arts nonprofit, and it won't go into a developer who's going to be thinking about how they can make more money and turn a profit. And, after the federal tax credits run out, they can sell apartments for market rate. That's not going to be the case with what we're doing here. And in terms of contributing to ownership of the homes and rentals, not everybody's in a situation where they can afford to purchase a home. So the rental program was created to help people build credit, to get them in a position, and our partner INHP, they provide free credit counseling to artists who are in the rental program, and there's other things we do to build, to prepare them for home ownership.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate the sort of your candor and candidness about how you began and where that kind of took you. And then also just like your willingness, I love and draw a lot of inspiration from your willingness to engage in the messiness of development. As Jim, you were saying, it's easy to be sort of idealistic and anti-capitalist, but in some ways this is a system, as you said, we're operating within. And so we have to deal with this messiness. So in terms of messiness, Alicia, so as you began to kind of grow and formalize the Artist Village and go through the kind of legal process of making it, as you said, legit, what ways did you enable artists to develop their craft and contribute to the cultural and visual environment of the Artist Village itself as it grew?
Okay. Well, the Artist Village is it's nestled right in an area that's called Old Redford. It's the Old Redford district, and we are as far northwest of Detroit as you can possibly go. However, I look at it as an entry point, like the entrance to the city of Detroit. Um, we were on a mission. You know, when we founded the Artist Village, we were on a mission to be part of the solution in the community, to have a place where people from the community can come and be like a one-stop shop. It is the artists, though, that just overwhelmed us with their spirit and their love, and they're willing to, like you said, Shantae, perform, demonstrate, paint. We had poets, vocalists, musicians, chefs, you know, who were just creating. And so this just became a place to call home. It became a creative community center. And inside of that is these programs and projects started to develop. We had a project called Creative Juices, which was an open mic poetry series. And we ran that every Saturday for 10 years. It was a way to raise awareness, dollars, and of course, let the artists do what they do. It was a magical night. It was something that just began to kind of take on and spin-offs of its own. People started to do summer camp. We started to help kids with their art projects. Chaz was instrumental in creating programs that we can tag abandoned houses for, and that's the butterfly effect. And you'll see that on the screen now, is that the butterflies is a rebirth. And so we wanted to let people know that you see something abandoned, but if you saw a butterfly on it, that the rebirth, that space was available to create. So the artists they just flourished. They were writing, singing. We have a garden. Every time you looked around, something was formed from the artist. And so we just wanted to cultivate that. We just wanted to highlight that. And the more they did, the more people came. And they came from all over. People, local celebrities from all over the world started to visit. And that was getting the synergy going, right? People started to have their own places in their own communities where they lived at, like Little Baby Artist Village, a spinoff. Was a mission and a movement. And the way that people responded to that, to this day, I can still feel it. The way that they responded to it, I'm proud of that. I appreciate everything that, you know, everyone had to commit to it. It was just something that you felt like you were in another world. When you visit the Artist Village, which is a block long, it has the gallery, it has the coffee shop, it has the room without a roof, the space that you're seeing now. At one point it had a roof, but it fell down. And Chaz painted it, John cleaned it up, and we call it the room without a roof. And I tell you, vendors came from all over just to be in that space. Instead of opening up their own businesses, creating that built-in cost of building and taxes and rent and so on and so forth, they had an opportunity to vend in this space, kind of get a chance to build up their followers, their customers, their clientele, and then spin off into their own, which I see that now. So over the years, I've been to different places and I've seen a little bit of Artist Village all over the city. And that is what it's all about, is leaving a legacy. That's why we got into this. We wanted to leave a legacy, and how you do that is in the people.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alicia. I think one of the things that really struck me when you were so welcoming and kind of gave Laura and I a tour of the Artist Village is It's how you really enable and allow individual artists and creatives to kind of find and own a piece of an idea. And so to me, the Artist Village is just this sort of beautiful kind of mosaic of ideas that individuals sort of own and participate in, that kind of all work together and weave together. I think that's super powerful.
Exactly.
So Tammy, so speaking of ownership, Tammy, how do you see the stewardship of land and nature specifically as a strategy for building wellness, power, and liberation? Using the idea of the garden, the community kitchen to kind of promote movement and accessibility. I'll add that the tree house is located in a neighborhood of houses, and you're sort of building community within a neighborhood that has kind of an alignment of single family houses.
We have a lot of like open fields in our community that were like blighted areas. So in looking at those blighted areas and, you know, turning them into spaces for the community to be able to to be able to own, to be able to enjoy, to be able to come out and be a part of something and work together. So that's what we took a lot of these lots on Manistee and the block behind Manistee and turned them into, like right here, this is our empowerment garden. And it's a garden with this donation from Charles H. Wright Museum was called Shine a Light. It was one of their projects for putting light in a community where there was no street lights. So they liked it, our idea of mental health and holistic well-being for our community. So they chose us to put this structure here, and we enjoy it all the time. It's actually ran by solar power because all of our projects are going to be ran by solar power or partial solar power for sustainability for our community. So this is one of the spaces where if our electricity went out in our community, they could come here and plug up. If they had medical equipment that they needed to plug up when we didn't have power, they could come here and plug that up, you know, and still be operational and still be in a nice space. So that's one of the spaces, and that's a space for mental health because we have a program called horticultural therapy where individuals can get therapy and they can work in the garden, working with their hands, working with compost, working with the soils, you know, kind of like more stress relievers. So that's what we look for. We look for things that are gonna make us feel good from day to day. We have a lot going on right now in our society. So anytime we can get and practice right now, say social distancing, and still feel good about living and feel good about communicating with each other, I think we've accomplished our job. So this is one of the spaces here.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
So a theme that I'm hearing reoccurring through each of our panelists is the fact that each of these spaces needs to serve multiple functions. And with the influence of the artists, like the artists are actually kind of manipulating those functions. So each of you needs to be adaptable and flexible and respond to whatever's happening, whether it's a political force or the creativity of the artist. So in this next set of questions, we want to talk more about that, and both, you know, how artists have played a role on the evolution of your spaces, but then also if there are any roadblocks, such as discriminatory funding policies or displacement that you've had to address. So I'm going to start with Jim, I think Jim and Shate, and you can pick who answers this one. But if you could share a couple of ways that you've overcome these roadblocks. Shate, you spoke a little bit about the ownership structure that you looked at, but are there other strategies that you've had to implement in order to kind of preserve the event planning and the programming while also trying to manage the ownership of the artists?
So we'll share this one again. So the first part of what we set out to do Our first 5 houses were a land trust co-ownership model, and those still required artists to get loans. And what we really found is that the banking system is, as opposed to other forms of funding maybe that are progressing, the banking system has a lot of problems and is still not set up in a way that works well for artists or for artists of color in particular. So we had a lot of really great applicants, bringing in a very diverse and inclusive community. And as we encountered that with the lenders that we were working with, we were struggling to have people qualify for even a small loan of something like $40,000. So what we were able to do was to acquire more houses and make those affordable rental houses, with the idea being that the artists who are renting could eventually be able to work on some of the challenges that were going on with the banking system and be able to qualify for a loan to buy their home. And in the meantime, they're investing in the community, and the whole idea is that they'll stay in the community and become a homeowner in the future if they want to, or they can continue to rent, and the rent is discounted at basically at the same level that the ownership is. And the commitment in both cases is 16 hours a month of working basically through their practice in partnership with their other neighbors and in the community. And that includes all kinds of things like going to neighborhood meetings or even having a dinner with your neighbor. And so far this has been very successful for us in terms of who we've been able to bring in between the artists and their family members. Out of the 19 that we have so far living on the block, we have been able to have 13 Black artists out of the 19. And we even had our first family member born on the block during the program. So there was one of the artists' families had a baby, and she actually did a home birth. So we've had a new resident born on the block recently.
Wow.
It was amazing. Shate can finish our answer now.
So one thing that's been very important is having a supportive partner in the Community Development Corporation that we partner with for the housing program. You know, because we started out as an arts organization. We not really prepared for, and we've learned a lot of things the hard way about owning buildings. But Terry Skipper with Riley Area Development, she was really great about when we and the neighbors, mainly the jurors, selected people as part of the program. When they weren't able to acquire a loan, she figured out through Riley Area to do like rent to own. Just looking at, you know, we had a lot of difficulty, and I put 2 articles in the chat. It's very difficult. It's much more difficult for borrowers of color to get loans than white borrowers. And Terry understood that. So she was very supportive and figured it out and didn't tell me, you need to come up with someone new who actually qualifies for a loan. Terry was the one who sent me these articles and was like, yeah, let's figure this out. Let's get the right people part of this program, you know, because part of the program was, you know, like I said, we had utopic leanings. Now, I don't believe it's possible to actually create a utopia. Utopia always leaves some segment of the population out and has failings, but we have to try, you know, the part of like always trying to be our best selves and be our best community is what we're going for with that. And, you know, there's, you know, how things work in the community is, you know, even in terms of lawn equipment, like, so a lawnmower, you know, that all the people in the program are given a key to the shed, and you know, get the lawnmower out when you want to mow your lawn. Pretty soon, just now, the program's filled. It took us a lot longer. We did not expect to have these kind of issues for people getting a $40,000 loan, essentially. So it took us a lot longer to fill this program. Just now it's full. So it will really, we'll really start trying to also get grant money for these artists to work in the community, to support them through their art so that they stay here, that they feel that they're fulfilled as an artist and not taken advantage of. That's important to us. We're very, you know, just with having artists part of our staff, we try to be very cognizant of not taking advantage of artists because they're so giving. So yeah, the other thing we did to make this happen, where, you know, and having artists specifically in these homes, was the programming element is separate than the financing element of the program. So basically, the artists are paid $5,000 to be part of the program. The APL, it's called the Artist Public Life Housing Program. It's APLR for short. So that's how we were, you know, able to just specifically have housing for artists and offer that.
I really like that idea of having to lean on the artists and partner with them, from simple things like, you know, sharing the resources, the lawnmowers and such. But also, Alicia, with the Artist Village, we get the sense that you've really had to partner strongly with artists in order to evolve the Artist Village. And I'm wondering if you can share ways that you've pivoted, whether maybe it's not so much an obstacle that you had to overcome, or you know, pivoted from a negative aspect, but more so of opportunities that have come. And I'm thinking specifically the Sidewalk Festival, and the artists that you've joined in that effort, and then just ideas that you have with an artist in residency program potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So 17 years, we've had to pivot a lot, right? We have been through many different phases of the Artist Village while developing it, while keeping the building up to code and maintaining it and securing it and paying the light bill and the taxes and so on and so forth. This whole project, the whole building was under land contract. And so we wanted to show that we can be good building owners and kind of be a catalyst in this area, that a group of people can own a building, operate it, and out of that is projects, programs, spin-offs, other small businesses, and so on and so forth. So over the course of the village in the beginning, of everyone kind of donating their time and money, we literally would pass the hat at the open mic series to pay the light bill, okay? It was grassroots. And as it began to mature and do other projects and programs, artists began to see that their value in what their work, that their work had value. And as they began to grow into professions, always being an artist at heart, but a lot of them got their own buildings, became journalists, became teachers, and so on and so forth. As that began to change, Ryan Johnson, the founder of Sidewalk, came to me 8 years ago now, maybe 9. and said that she had this idea of having a sidewalk festival, having the art spill out from the village into the street. And wow, she had big dreams. She wanted to, close down the street and have different artists from all over and have these installations, on the street. It began as a 1-day, then a 2-day event. But with that, something that she has said during our meeting is that usually our youth, our kids from this community are intimidated by the art institutions. They're big, they're gray, there's no windows. It's just not friendly. And so the Sidewalk Festival, by it being on their level, being in the street, I saw this evolution that each one of us is an artist. It's all about just bringing it out. And the Sidewalk Festival, it brought it out. There would be kids from 2 to 92 out there. It gave artists just their own time and their own space to have a show, to perform, to look forward to something. And she was able to write grants and pay the artists, what they're worth. At a minimum, acknowledging that they truly are artists. And so the Sidewalk Festival, again, a block long, you would see installations, you would see bicycles made out of metal that the kids got to ride in. We had food trucks and chefs, again, because that's art as well. This year would have been the 8th year that we celebrated the Sidewalk Festival, but you all know why. With that said, I'm looking forward to next year. I'm looking forward for this time that we've had all off to allow the 9th year to really expand, and for people in the corporate industry, in the business world, funders, for them to understand that it is the artist that is on the threshold of the spirit world, and they will have a footprint as to what's happening in our world. And that allows us to grow as a people. As Tammy said, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, young, old, that shouldn't matter. What should matter is that we're all giving something and we're all taking something away. And so the Sidewalk Festival, along with other festivals that we have supported, tattoo festivals, right? So tattoo artists, 3-day festival, local artists being able to do what they do and love. We've had the Natural Fly Hair Festival, where everything that someone creates naturally, whether it's hair or food or clothes or whatever it may be, that we will, as the Artist Village and as a community leader and a business owner and resident of this city, that this can be the model for people to create this all over in their communities, especially the urban communities. Thank you.
That was so good. Thank you for that. Yeah, one of the, I guess, overwhelming feelings that I got during Sidewalk Festival last year was that everyone had to cooperate. Whether you were visiting or you were an artist or you were one of the retailers, business owners, everyone just cooperated and everyone was accepted no matter who you were. And so, yeah, it's huge bummer that it's been put on pause this year, but like you said, it's a year to kind of reflect and imagine what next year will be like. And kind of switching over to Tammy, it seems like on your Facebook page, the Manistee Community Facebook page, it's constantly being updated. You're constantly still doing something, even though we're having to social distance. You're still there, committed to serving your community. And so I'm wondering if you can share what that's been like, how you've responded to your community, since March, and just how you've been flexible.
Well, since March, since COVID happened to the country, the world rather, we started the first week, we started a resource table for our, well, not just for our community, for all communities were welcome to come. And we had a conference call where I called this call positive, so safe social distancing. So we got on this call, the neighbors and we created this resource table where people could come and they could get food, they could get hand sanitizers, masks, gloves. They could get, some of us were even digging up our perennials, people who wanted to plant perennials in their garden as a stress reliever, going in their gardens working, they could come and get free plants. We had our Grosse Pointe partners came and Grosse Pointe came and they provided us with food every Saturday and laundry soap and food. They provided us with just anything that a person could need just in their household and for the seniors. So we had delivery of, a lot of people were afraid to like come out to get the stuff. So we had a team of our neighbors that would just do delivery to people who were afraid to come out of their houses. They would deliver these packages and just sit them on the porch. We also had delivery of produce. We had produce delivered. We had one of our senior buildings in our community who didn't have laundry, so we had police officers come and deliver that laundry soap. We also had and registering to vote. That was just a couple of weeks ago, where we came out and the community, we practiced safe social distancing. We gave away 50 bikes. We gave away book bags for the kids. We had free food, and that was so people could register to vote and they could do the census, something that we need to happen in our city to keep those federal dollars for programs that we need. So we had that and it was very successful. And this week, on the 26th, we'll have a garage giveaway. They register for this garage giveaway because one of our partners in the Ice Cream Social has a warehouse of items that are like sheets and pillowcases and furniture, and the warehouse is full and she wants to empty her warehouse. She's giving all these things away free. So on the 26th, we'll be giving those things away, 50 more bikes. We'll be registering for the census again and also registering to vote. So even though COVID is here, we're still managing to help take care of our communities and other communities where anybody can come and get the things that we're offering. We're not limited to just Jefferson Chalmers. So this is a way that we can help people who have very little. Those who feel that they're hungry or they need soap, they need masks, they need hand sanitizers. We're just doing whatever we can do to help our communities and other communities in our city to get through COVID. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't mention that we had food delivered to Mississippi and also to Memphis, Tennessee. We do 500 boxes every 2 weeks of produce to those places.
That's incredible.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so. It should be, pretty obvious now that partnerships are kind of the foundation for a lot of what you guys do, and for inspiration in terms of knowledge, creativity, etc. So I think I'd like to have a series of questions around the idea of partnerships and relationship building at multiple scales, multiple communities, working with kind of various organizations and regulatory environments as well. So Alicia, so we first met when we were submitting kind of entry into the Design Center in a Box competition, which was hosted by the City of Detroit Planning Department. Can you talk about your relationship with the Planning Department and how that has helped provide potentially more resources or benefits to the community, and how having the Design Center has led to more potential programming opportunities?
Yes. Actually, it's been a few years now, and the relationship has been like any. We just started off talking, and we went on a date, and we were meeting, and, we were courting, and, emailing, and it just started off as a good relationship. Also with you guys, you all came at the right time, because the Sidewalk Festival, you were able to see some of that remnants of that from that prior year, which kind of was like this baton that got passed down to you guys to do the design that you all did, which people just love it, plain and simple. So thank you, Mike and Lauren, for that. As you know, sometimes the relationship with government and community and people, it's gray, right? The people that are executing the different laws for the city, the state, or the county, they're people. They're people too. And I like to think that when those folks came to the Artist Village, that their spirit was humanized. Their spirit was able to kind of step a little bit outside of that in order to translate to the government what's going on in this community. And for our area, we wanted to be that destination place. We wanted to be an arts district. And so the Planning and Development Department, I got to say that one of the folks there, Michelle, we communicate, good, bad, or indifferent. She's been a great support. She has been able to communicate and translate to the city on what it is that we need as a community. And so the design in the box, I was able to be a volunteer to discuss what this could look like and what this can do for our community. We were able to house it inside this space that you see at the village. The different things that came out of that just exploded. We were able to write grants. We were able to have community meetings there. We were able to introduce that to the following year as Sidewalk as the entry point to the entire block. We were able to have classes there, like Birthing of Detroit, to help women who were having issues with low birth rate here in the city. We were able to have projects like to help people get information about their property taxes, homeownership. We were able to have pop-up vendors. That was probably the phase we were at when COVID happened. And you'll see two of the vendors there. Again, we did it in a room without a roof. And so now we were able to do it inside, of course, because we have winter, but they were able to set up every Saturday, and people from the community were able to come in. And as these projects happened, it was just a good mixture of people from all over supporting local artists, supporting local vendors, again, allowing them to build their clientele so that they can possibly spin off into their own. We're still working at it. We still want more. We still want, things outside of the village, outside of the community, outside of the village and our block to look nice, to be safe, to be well lit, to have our tag of the Old Redford District, like flags. We still are working with those things, and we're still committed to doing it. And the city has been committed to doing it as well. Again, the communication has never stopped, good, bad, or indifferent. We're gonna push forward because this is a movement. This is what we need to do. And this is where we'll make a difference at, so that we can be just like any other community in any other city and state around this country. We just want the basics, a clean, affordable, nice community that's safe and well lit.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia.
You're welcome.
I think I saw Michelle in the audience, so shout out to Michelle. Thanks for all your hard work, Michelle. I think, excuse me. I mean, one of the things I sort of experience with the design center, Alicia, is like the power and how having relationships can be a demonstration of the kind of power of kind of collaboration. And when, so it allows you and allows maybe the city, a group like the planning department, to sort of recognize the sort of the coalition building that you guys are building through relationships with artists, community orgs, et cetera. And that so is its own sort of positive feedback loop to kind of grow more sort of relationships and possibilities.
Mhm. Can I also say
Yeah.
that with those relationships, the folks from the Design in a Box and the city and the county, we're starting to use that as their satellite office, right? To make it easier for the people of the community not to go downtown, not to, deal with the parking and going on the 4th floor, then go down to the 2nd floor, then go over here. It became like a one-stop shop, whereas the idea of a true village is that we're there to help everybody and everybody is there to help. And so that was just getting on a roll. Whereas, that space, multi-purpose, is that the city and the county and the Design in a Box folks were able to be there as their satellite office. Our district captain, our business district captain, Tanisha Johnson, she started having her meetings there. And it just began to be where this is the village. This is the place where I go from A to Z. I can, get resources on community, food, art, projects, programs, and a good cup of coffee.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks, Alicia. So obviously great relationship with local government, local governance. Tammy, you've had a lot of experience working with local governments in a way that gives kind of opportunities to partner with you. Can you share how you've cultivated these relationships and why it's so important for local governments to invest in grassroots community efforts?
I think I've gained these relationships with local government due to them seeing that, that this is seen, that the community is very much so involved in what we're doing. And it's very exciting to the community, and we're working together in the community as a team. And these things that we're doing in the community are things that are definitely needed, because who better knows what's needed in a community than the community the people who live there. So I think what we're doing has brought the attention of our local government and is very supportive by our local government, because what we're doing in Jefferson Chalmers is making the way for the East Side to have a space that's conducive to everyone, and a space of sustainability, a space for people with mental health, an inclusion of people with disabilities. So I think our city and our local government, they really support things that, when they see that it's positive, it's going somewhere, and it's really helping the people, I think they're all for it. And I appreciate them for being for something that we, the people, it's not somebody coming in like a big organization or a big corporation coming and saying, okay, this is what we think we need to do with these big vacant lots, and let's do this and let's do this. And they're telling us what they want us to do, right? It's us grassroots people that are here, that live here, that have to board up the houses if people move out of them and try to burn them up, or if investors come in and don't take care of them. They're listening to us now. They're listening to what we want, how we want things to be, and what we want them to look like, and what we feel community is. And I think we have the best of everything here in Detroit right now, because our government is listening. Our city is listening. Our city council is listening. Our mayor is listening. Wayne County is listening. So they're listening to us grassroots people now. And I think that's going to take our city farther. That's going to make the people want to live here, want to be involved in community things, and make living in our city the best city around. That's the way I feel about it.
That's great, Tammy. Thanks. You're sort of positive. All these positive relationships really sort of perhaps are sort of give kind of optimism to the ability to kind of to build these relationships and coalitions to advance the work you guys are doing. Jim and Shante, so in terms of partnerships, you have been sort of extremely selective in who you partner with and have employed a type of tactical information sharing as a means of preventing speculative development. Can you speak to how this has increased trust or provided more opportunities within the Garfield Park community?
An important thing for us is that we live here in the neighborhood, so that helps a lot. And we just talk to the neighbors, and now we have the artist residents living in the neighborhood, and they're ambassadors for what we're doing too. And we're doing that together. So when Shate was talking about this utopian idea, or the idea of our block as sort of a micro community, one of the key factors in the way we're looking at it is that we don't think that it's closed off. So a lot of times, like she said, a utopian idea or a co-living kind of arrangement usually has a wall around it and isn't porous. And we try to make it so there's a lot of ways for things to flow in and out of the community that we're working on, that's small in one block, and then working with the broader community around us, the neighborhoods around us. And so a big part of this is, as we're talking with neighbors, they're a lot of times, especially when we got started, they thought that we might want to buy their house, or that it's a good time for them to sell their house at that point. And so we talked to them and said, no, we are only trying to get a hold of vacant houses. If you're in your house and you like the neighborhood now, you're going to like it a lot more in the future, because it's going to keep getting better. And we're working on all these things. So this vacant factory building right here isn't going to be vacant anymore. It's going to have an art center in it. And then we explain what's really going on and make sure that the neighbors are the first to know. So this isn't happening behind the scenes and isn't happening without their knowledge, which is so often what happens when a neighborhood gentrifies. It's people think it's never going to get any better. They start selling. The other people make the money off of that in the future, and then everybody's gone. And then they look back at their old neighborhood and wish they were still there, because they're close to transit, they're close to downtown, they're close to different jobs they could have. So we're making sure that we're communicating that, and we're not working with people who would want to try to hide that stuff and be looking at it in a profit-driven way that excludes making sure the residents who are there now, who want to be part of the neighborhood long-term, aren't able, we want to make sure they're able to do that too.
Real quick, I also want to add, we have partnerships with schools in the neighborhood too. Like, so Crystal House, for example, they didn't have a wood shop anymore because schools have gotten rid of that. And the teacher reached out to us, and we have a lot of neighborhood meetings in our spaces. So schools, community groups, we're fiscal agents for artists who want to start their own nonprofits. Like one of our staff artists who's been with us for a long time, Eduardo Luna, starting his own nonprofit now. And so we want to foster more projects and more artist-led grassroots projects, and work with community partners on that. And a lot of times too, like people would approach us to, like, whenever something was about to go on the market in advance. And another thing is, like, before we opened, we did hold off on releasing the press release about our purchase of the big buildings before acquiring some of the homes, because you do get people who are realtors or developers, when they find out you're going to start a big project in an area, they'll swoop in and try to buy up everything. And it's happened several different neighborhoods here. So, just a tactic, if you do take on something like that, is to don't put everything out there because that maybe you don't, that the neighbors don't want in the neighborhood will come in.
We were able to buy, the houses we bought were vacant, and the ones that we didn't get from the factory that had bought those up around it were owned by banks and Boca Raton and stuff like that. So, you know, you have that all over the country, and that's been a big problem in Detroit too, where it's just these absentee owners. And so we didn't want them to know what we were up to, because we'd have to pay them a lot more, and we'd rather keep the prices low for the artists.
Great, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. One of the many reasons why Mike and I have been so drawn to the four of you and your work is that you guys have really radicalized the notion of community and the role of community. And we're really interested in how, you know, as architects, how space could respond to that and be informed by that. But I want to hear from you how you're imagining new futures. And it just seems like this year in 2020, the Earth has been thrown off of its axis, and it's created a lot of opportunity for rebirth and kind of figuring out new normals, or even just resisting the idea of normal altogether. So I want to hear from each of you, and I think I want to start with Shate, if you're up for it, to talk about your ideas and your vision for utopia in terms of collective caregiving or social justice, or even how you want to provide joy in your community.
So we, you know, especially with the APLR program, I really, you know, we're going to have our first meetup as a community, as a whole community, finally tomorrow night. And so part of it, you know, is that they guide it and they direct how they want the community to run, and what sort of opportunities they can seek together. And, you know, just, we want it to be an organic process and not push things on the community. We're always looking at, you know, how we can fit into what's happening in the world, in our community, and you know, we want the artists to have input in that, and that's not always conducive to grants, which, you know, a lot of times people want to know, well, what exactly is this going to be? So we, you know, when we say we're striving and leaning towards this utopia, that's what it is. And how do you have create something that lasts in a community that lasts and wants to grow and be around each other, because it's not easy living with anyone, you know. So we have goals and belief in artists, and basically we're operating on this belief of the importance of artists and trust in that. And we have some firm guidelines, but really we want it to come from the artists and their involvement in the community. And that's where I see this going. And even, you know, with the buildings and what they want to see there as well. It's not just what I want, but what sort of exhibits or programming, and how can we support that? Jim, do you want to add to that at all?
Sure. Do you want me to go next? Okay. I would say, you know, part of what I've seen a lot during this, you know, the pandemic has led to a lot of people shifting where they work, or working from home, or being more often home in their neighborhood and not having to go, or being able to go other places. So I think hopefully one future situation that can happen more often for everyone, and not just for people who have the privilege of living in these communities where there are all the things that they need right around them. I think that thinking more and more about communities that are more self-contained, where you're able to grow produce in your neighborhood, where you're able to have a coffee shop in your neighborhood, where you're able to have gathering places, where you're able to have a park that has programming in it or has opportunities for people to connect with each other and socialize. I think limiting the amount of travel that people have to do in cars is really important. So you don't have to do these commutes, because there's a lot of costs that are involved in individual car ownership, and a lot of safety things that come from everything ranging from people getting pulled over in their cars to also just getting in a wreck. So, if you could live in a neighborhood where you don't have to drive a lot all the time, and you have good transit, or you have just what you need within a couple of blocks of where you live, that's what we see down on the block where we're doing our work, and where we're there every day. We can just see how our neighbors, both the artists who live in the housing and the other neighbors, are connecting with each other and supporting each other. And that's what we're all working for, to be supportive in that way in our communities.
Thank you. Tammy, would you like to go next?
Yes, I don't mind going next. I see during this COVID time and communities, like you said, more walkable spaces, more being everything right inside of the community. We have a lot of gardens in our community, so we share a lot of fresh vegetables, and people can come and sit, and we have music, and we practice safe social distancing. It's working out different ways to still live, and deal with the situations of the COVID, being here and still being able to socialize and not being stressed out about what's going on right now, and being able to be your best self without the stress. So I think when we can create spaces in our communities and have spaces from now until that create that openness and being able to socialize, even if we have to till next year or year after next practice safe social distancing. How do we do that and do it lives and get through it safely? So I think we have to work out ways of doing that. And I think how we do that is we come together and eat, social distancing, and talk about what that looks like. How do we do it? Implement it. And if we have to tweak it a little bit, do that. So I think we have to rise to the occasion, to what's going on, work out what's comfortable for us as a community and as a person, and make it happen for all of us. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Tammy. I like that you include the community members as a way of kind of solving those problems and figuring out how to maybe change things if needed.
Yes.
Alicia.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with everybody on the panel. I piggyback on all of that. My utopia is to be part of the healing of this city, mind, body, and spirit. And I think that, I think we're all blessed that we have these projects and these missions that we're doing, because we're a little bit ahead of the curve, right? We were already speaking with our community. We were already seeing what our community needs. And so I would like for our district, our artist village, and our community to continue that. We're gonna have to see what the people need. Where are we right now? Who are we right now? And kind of flourish from that. It definitely is a different time. There's a lot going on, but being a leader, being a community leader in this city at this time, I think we have the support that we need. We have elected officials, we have artists, we have organizations that can help us do what we got to do in order for us to make it, through this. I like to think that this will pass and we'll look back on this and it'll be part of, history. But the part of that will be, what did we all do? What do we do to make a difference, to make it a little bit better and to heal our community, from our babies that are in school to people that looked at some of these places as their third place. It wasn't home, it wasn't work, but it was that third place. That's not the case right now. And so we got to get creative. Is that third place outside? Is it at the meeting at the gardens, like Tammy said? Is it in homes? Is it on the front porch? We got to continue to be creative, be inspired, and be encouraged to be the leader within this community, within our city. And so I just want to be part of the healing right now, because I think we all need it. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. That was so awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. The next slide shows, for those that want to get involved and, either volunteer or donate, these are the websites that you can visit for each of these projects. That wraps up our questions. I did see a few questions go in the chat. I think the only question I saw was around gentrification. Is victimization, how we describe those, impacted by gentrification? And it's an interesting way to frame the act. It suggests an act of violence. I don't know if Jim and Shatay, if that's something maybe you can succinctly respond to, but it's kind of a heavy topic.
I'll respond to that. I think it's really a complicated thing because especially with land and home ownership and usage, and first of all, when it comes to individual people, I wouldn't say, I try to leave it up to somebody how they want to define what has happened to them. So I wouldn't, so saying they're a victim, that would be up to the individual to decide if they felt victimized by gentrification. It's my grandfather, his family, he's Creek, Native American, they lost their land. So when you think about even the land that we're on right now, it's not our land. None of, this wasn't how, nothing that has happened in America to date has been fair or good, and how America was built has not been fair or good, contrary to what we've learned in history class. So, when it comes down to how do we define ourselves? Well, I think that's up to the individual. Gentrification's awful. It has, that displacement's terrible, and it happens over and over again. And I'm not going to pretend that that we will not do no harm. It's you can't do work, you can't do anything, because you don't. If you'd have to just be still and do nothing to harm no one, because you don't know how your actions are always going to filter down to another person. It's not. I don't think anyone is free of sin in this situation.
I appreciate I appreciate the response, the realness to it. And like you had said earlier, we are all striving to do our best, even though we don't know like the total ramifications and the domino effect. And by situating yourselves within the community, living with the community, you know, as Tammy, you said, you're speaking on behalf of the community. They are right there with you. That's empowering. That brings them power over the course of their property.
Yeah. Can I say that the people of the community that stand up, we have the power. All we have to do is activate it. There was a development in our area, a Myers grocery store. But before they built that Myers, before they put that $33 million investment into the neighborhood, they came and talked to the community at large and saw what we wanted. And we had an unofficial community benefits agreement, right? Whereas you will hire people from our community who want to work there. We will help them get the jobs. It was a massive effort behind the scenes, but almost 300 people got hired in and advanced. We have another development that's coming on board right at the corner of Grand River and Lasher, the Obama building. The community, the power. We named the building. And then they invested $3.5 million. And then they kept the energy and the synergy of that community going. And we still talk and communicate to this day. Now, is it 100% that they're going to do what the community want? No, they're not. But the fact is, before you enter our community, before you say that you want to open up something and you want to have a business over here, you need to get to know who's already there, who's doing what, and you're going to become part of that family within that community. And so gentrification, that's a tricky word. So is being a Black woman in this country, okay? So we have the power as leaders. We have it, and all we have to do is to continue to activate it and execute whatever the community and our people that follow us, that support us, is understand what they want and let the people know who's coming, what they need. And that's our power, and we got to use it today, like right now, like tonight, you know? So yeah, don't get me started.
Yes, thank you.
This is Jesse. I just wanted to chime in. Those are awesome points, Alicia. And I think what you're hitting on is, at least in my mind, maybe the difference between progress and development versus gentrification. I think when you have builders and you have companies come into an area and they work with the community and they engage the community and the community has input, I think that's a different act. That's a different process. I think it's when you have these investors and these developers that have nothing to do with feet on the ground and the community that's there, that they're disrupting or displacing, that it does become an act of violence in the way I'm thinking about it. And I think the process you described is awesome. And I think, we talked earlier about, utopian, and I don't know that utopian is really how I would describe it, because this is very realistic. I think taking the steps you're describing and doing the things you're talking about doing, this is not utopianism. This is what we can do. We can go out and achieve this. This isn't unreal. It's not unsustainable. I just think the key point that you brought up is that engagement with the community, and just really awesome points. And again, the time is now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Lauren Pedigo, who has helped tremendously with our research. These are the links if you want to get involved and contribute. And we hope that this has been helpful, insightful, educational, and inspiring and motivational. So thank you and have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you all.
Detroit.
Good night.
Bye.
Yeah, thank
And also,
you.
maybe I'll just add that, you know, this is a continuing effort that Laura and I are going to keep working on. So if you have ideas, suggestions, etc., we're all ears.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.
Take care. It's great to see you.
Yeah.